Good afternoon. My name is Fred Nauer, Chief Flight Instructor, Thunderbird Aviation, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the ForeFlight Seminar that we're going to be doing this month. And we will try to do some sort of seminar every second Saturday for the foreseeable future, so that you can put me on your calendar if you want to participate. We'll talk more about what the next seminar is going to be about next month at the end of the process here. So let's.
We're getting some serious echo. Can you ask everyone to mute again?
I think it's more of a feedback, maybe some distance between speakers and microphone.
You can see that.
Okay. There we go. We'll just do it that way. All righty. So first off, before we start into the ForeFlight stuff, obviously, if you've already been into ForeFlight, you know how to put it into the system. But basically, ForeFlight is just an application, just like any other application that you're going to download to your device. I use mine on an iPad because that's where ForeFlight did all their stuff in the very beginning, and most of the stuff that they've been working on has also been set up so that it works on the iPad itself. But there may be some other applications that you might want to add to your system to help you with the ForeFlight stuff. The one that I use there in the upper left-hand corner of my navigation page here is the weather channel, because like most systems, the ForeFlight gets all their information from the National Weather Service. And sorry about that. And so if you're looking for more than a few days out, the weather channel gives you the all the information about weather that may be over the next week. Now the applicability or the reliability of those forecasts more than 2 or 3 days out is always suspect, but at least it gives you the ability to take a look at that information. And in ForeFlight itself, under Documents, the ones that you can download from the system itself. Now, that in my document screen here, you can see all sorts of stuff because I'm a chief flight instructor, so I have all the regulations and all the handbooks that I need to for teaching students how to fly. But even though you get I've downloaded the North Central Chart Supplement book, used to be called the Airport Facilities Directory. And I think like biennial flight review, it's going to be really, really hard for the FAA to get everybody to start calling this the Chart Supplement book. But the reason I downloaded the Chart Supplement book is because that was the only place that I could find that had the legend in the front for what all the symbols meant, and the legend in the front for what all the different subject areas that you could possibly get on all the airport information there. The other one I downloaded for my training purposes is the Vfr Chart Legend and the Ifr Low Legend. All these things came from the FAA drives over here on the left side. But if you download nothing else, go into the ForeFlight section and download the pilot's guide, because there's a lot of information in here, and every time they update ForeFlight, they update the guide so that every time you do the, we'll talk about how the downloads work and how the system updates itself for all the different charts and things a little bit later. But along with all the charts that are updated every 24 to 48 days, 28 to 56 days, the ForeFlight also updates their pilot's guide here as things get updated in the system itself. So today I saw, if you're brand new to ForeFlight, the best place to start is after you've signed up for the application. Then the first decision you have to make is what level of ForeFlight do you want to be on. The app comes with 30 days free, and you can use the system for 30 days. For free, but then you're going to have to start paying for it. So the other reason I bring this up right now is not that I'm getting any money from ForeFlight, but just to let you know what information is available to you at the various levels that ForeFlight has. The $99, the $100 a year one is the basic system, but there's all sorts of wonderful things that you can do in here, including all the flight planning and getting all the aviation weather, all the VFR and IFR charts for the entire United States, including Puerto Rico and Guam and Hawaii and Alaska. So anything, and so it's the low charts for the IFR people. It's the high charts if you're one of those kind of guys that flies in the upper levels for the IFR world. It's all the VFR sectionals and all the information that is included in the chart supplement book is available through the application. There's the airport info, including FBO information. So if you're going someplace you've never been to before, you can learn about FBOs and stuff like that. If you can set up the system, you can do the weight and balance. You can even do your own logbook. The system is set up to track the time if you have the app running while you're flying. It'll track the time when the airplane gets going more than 30 knots, but there's also a way of going in there and adjusting that time to Hobbs time if you want to. There's a way of setting up checklists for each different kinds of airplanes. Printable nav logs, avionics connectivity, and the big thing now is being able to pull the traffic from the internet. Basically, they pull that from can't remember the name of the system, but you can be sitting at your desk now, looking at your iPad, and you can to be able to tell what the traffic situation is, where you are, and where you might be going. The next level up, which is the one I recommend, is the $200 version, because it does everything we just talked about. Plus, it gives you geo-reference approaches and charts. If you're an IFR person, this is absolutely excellent. The blue airplane appears right on the you pull up the approach chart for an airport, or the SID or star for leaving or coming back into an airport area, your airplane will appear right on the chart. The airplane will appear on the IFR and VFR charts over here into the basic side, but this one adds the geo-reference business to approaches and all the other charts, including the taxi diagram. So if you're going someplace you've never been to before, using the $200 version, you can actually get the airplane to appear on the taxi diagram for you, so that you can look at the chart and follow yourself along as you taxi along. you can put the approach plates on the map, which is excellent for me as an instructor, because I can put the chart on the map and see how the student is flying the approach and look at the VFR sectional underneath to make sure we're not flying ourselves into any Class B airspace. Synthetic vision gives you the ability in some situations to figure out where you are or get a picture of, just like you would in a G1000. What's the picture supposed to look like outside your cockpit? Hazard advisor if you're getting too close to stuff on the ground. Terrain profile view, the ability to put documents into the cloud, and do interactive icing and turbulence layers. Now, so the reason I also bring this up is because I've gone to the $300 level. So if some of you are on the $99 level and are following along here, you may see some things on my ForeFlight app that you may not have if you're not in the $300 level. So $300 level is everything we just talked about. Plus, the reason I basically got this is because it allows for adding information about the icing conditions and adding that information to the profile view. A lot of the stuff that's over here in the $300 version is set up for organizations that are basically flying as like a charter department or something like that, because it allows you to be able to do takeoff and landing data and a 3D review of the flight that you've just done, maybe for more training purposes, but it does improved time and fuel calculations and allows you to add more detailed aircraft performance profiles into it to get those. And obviously an integrated jet fuel prices. So again, most of the stuff that's over here is set up for charter operations. Stand by while I bring back my other screen here. Hang on just a second while I let some more people in here. So back to ForeFlight. So the system is set up so that most of the stuff that you're looking at will be in the, and they have basically 3 places you can go to find information that you can get out of ForeFlight. The stuff up here at the top is basically for the information that is appearing on the map itself. And the FPL is the section where you learn how to do the flight plan. The stuff along the bottom here gives you information about the different views that you can have in ForeFlight itself. We're going to start here over at the More section on the lower part here in the lower right-hand corner. You just tap on that with your finger on your iPad, and you can see that all the information over here that we talked about comes up. Like I said, some of these things may appear on mine that may not be on yours because I have the more expensive version of ForeFlight. The most important thing, though, start at the top here, is downloads. The download is if you have, once, like I said, when something is updated in the FAA chart system, the down here in the More, it'll tell you how many different downloads you have available to you. And so you can click on the download section at the top of this column here and get that download started. It's best to do that if you're hooked up to Wi-Fi someplace, because it is a lot of data sometimes. And depending on these, if you try to use it with just cellular data, it'll take forever and cost you lots and lots of gigs. So it's better to do that downloading through a Wi-Fi system. Then at the setting side, I'll click on that here, tap that in the upper corner there. This is all the stuff that you can do some of this stuff in various other places, but the very, very top part there is the ability to dim the screen. You just touch that dot and move it with your finger. That changes the brightness of the screen, which is very, very helpful when you start flying it in the dark, which is happening a whole lot earlier now and is going to continue to get earlier until just before Christmas. Some of the other settings that I use is when you tap onto an airport, I use the show weather first section there to be able to make sure that the weather is the stuff that comes up the first time. If you don't do that, then the basic information about the airport comes up. If you're brand new to flying and you haven't quite figured out all the information about how to decode the weather information, the past half translations allows you to have the information translated, decoded for you. Airway decoding allows you to choose various ways of descending, the showing of the waypoints along the airways, or just in the places where the airway changes, entry and exit points. The map view is how you want to set the map up, either north up or track up centered, where the airplane's in the middle, or track up forward, where the airplane that's flying across the map is in the lower part of the screen. Most of the time that I since I've been doing the check ride portion of it, and we're doing lots of chandelles and lazy eights and azon pylons, turns around a point, that type of thing, I usually just leave it north up, so because otherwise, when you're doing all those turny things, the whole screen spins around on your lap there, and it tends to be a little distracting sometimes. But when I was in the Air Force flying backseat in the F4 on my navigator position, I always loved doing track up, because that way I could keep track of what was supposed to be left and right as I was flying along. Extended center lines is for the airports, so that you can, when you choose an airport to fly to, it'll draw the runway lines out away from that airport and put the numbers on the appropriate end. So if you know you want to land on runway 13, you know which side of the airport to travel to get on runway 13. So because up until about every, when I first started flying, I was always ending up pointing my airplane to the wrong end of the runway, because I was getting always mixed up about which end the runway 13 end was. Distance rings are away from your airplane, and it shows, depending on the how much of the map you're showing, it'll tell you how far the basically just how far things are away from your airplane. The track vector is the thing that comes off the nose of your airplane to figure out which way the airplane is going. When the airplane is displayed on your maps in ForeFlight, it's based on your ground track, not the heading of the airplane, because there's no way to input the heading into ForeFlight system. So the airplane on the map will always be pointed in the way the ground track is going. That track vector does the same thing. And then the length of the track vector right underneath that. Turning route labels on. Some of the other stuff, some of the other fun things down here near the bottom, the breadcrumbs is as you're flying along, a green line. If you got the breadcrumbs turned on, a green line appears behind your airplane and shows you where you've flown. It's very, very, I love using this during check rides, because when people get off course or don't fly the instrument approach correctly, I can show them right on the map where they went wrong. And then you can choose how long the breadcrumbs will stay on the screen. So if you lock the system down, if you choose this lock disables button thing, the system will be set up so that none of the buttons will work. So if you're in a turbulent area and you lock the screen won't move Well, you know, the other thing, it will be disable the buttons and it'll lock the screen down so that if you pick up the iPad, it won't shift position. Search and rescue features for those of you who are in the CAP and to do some search and rescue stuff. You set the automatic download thing every time downloads are available and you're hooked up to Wi-Fi, and ForeFlight will do it automatically. We'll talk about the pack system and the track log here in just a little bit. So lots of stuff on settings. I mean, to go through there in the more section. So, you know, we're going to be talking very fast about a lot of stuff today. So, you know, that's why I recommend that you download the pilot's guide to the system, so that if you're looking at something on the screen, you're not quite sure what it was and you can't remember what Fred talked about, or even if Fred was telling you the right thing, then you can look in the guide. So going down the view section here, we have the logbook section like we talked about, weight and balance. If you're brand new to ForeFlight, the best thing to do is, if you fly the same aircraft or the same set of aircraft a lot, go into the aircraft section, tap on the word aircraft there, and this is a good place to start all the information about to be able to use ForeFlight to the max extent possible. So ForeFlight just updated stuff, so some of the information that I was able to give was as the reason that little triangles appeared at the top there. But to set up an aircraft, you can either go over to the left side here where the word plus is, and that'll give you a blank page here and allow you to start filling in all the information that you need in order to be able to give yourself the best information available for the airplane. The first thing is, because a lot of the stuff that ForeFlight does is based on, this is also information they use to file the flight plan for you, along with your personal information that you've used when you sign up for ForeFlight in the first place, plus the information from the airplane itself here. Then if the more information you put in here, the better your flight planning is going to be, and it will also send the flight plan information into 1-800 weather brief, so that you can actually file your IFR or VFR flight plan before you go flying. So the more information you can put in here, the better off you're going to be. So obviously then, and I learned this the hard way, the first thing you want to do when you're typing in a tail number is always start it with the letter N for your American airplanes, because some of the information that it pulls out will also be based on the tail number. And if you forget the N, it starts looking in the entire world database and we'll never find the aircraft that you're actually flying. So start with the tail number. If you got a serial number, that's extra information in there. Obviously, the aircraft type allows you to be able to pick any of the aircraft that you're flying along here. So 4015 Juliet is an Archer 2. So then I'll select that. And that, by doing that, because they updated the thing, by updating the information about the type of airplane it is, that will help you with the information about that ForeFlight uses in order to be able to help you with the flight planning portion. Obviously, aircraft category, aircraft color, and usually your home airport, so it knows basically where you're going to be coming from all the time. And then obviously airspeed units. So then you can set down in the performance section, you can set up profiles for the system here, and a lot of this information it'll pull right out from the selection that you made in order to be able to the selection that you made based on the tail number and the type of airplane that you told it was. It gives you this information here, and it's already set up to go. You just need to choose which one. If this information is not available from the type of aircraft that you have, then you can go in here and create the unnamed profile down here at the bottom, and you hit the basic side there and throw in all that information on your own. and for your specific type of aircraft. The climb to airspeed, the more information you put on this page, again, the better off you're going to be as far as being able to for the ForeFlight to do a good flight plan for you. But if you put in the correct tail number and you to give it the type of airplane that you're flying, then it will go in and do a lot of these profiles for you based on the POH of the airplane itself. The runway profile based on the serial numbers that we've talked about. And what type of flaps you normally take off from. And the glide performance, the information you put in here will help you in while you're flying. Put in the best glide speed, and going into the best glide ratio, that's the part where you need to go in and dig into the POH a little bit to get that number. Basically, what you can usually find in the POH is a graph that gives you, or a chart of some types that gives you, depending on how high you are, how many miles you're going to be able to glide. So the first thing you have to do to be able to get the best glide ratio is either if the altitude is usually in feet, so the distance is usually in miles. So you either have to turn your altitude into miles, or your miles into feet, just so that you're doing the same thing, and then you divide the two to get your glide ratio. So when I did the mathematics for this airplane, the best glide ratio for this airplane is 9.5. So then when you put in that number, as you're flying along, if you choose to have the glide information appear on the screen, it will draw a little ring around your airplane that will change in various situations, depending on how high you are and how fast and what the ground is underneath you, how far it's going to be that you're going to be able to glide based on the winds at the altitude that you're at right at that moment. So it's an aid that you can use in ForeFlight to just in case when the engine quits, to be able to pick the best direction to turn right at that moment to be able to glide the farthest. The altitudes are just a default altitude. If you always fly at the same altitude, just you can put that in there. You can modify all this stuff as when you get into the flight planning stuff. Then the weight units all come in from the system there. Fuels is good there. In the filing section here, since all flight plans now in the United States are being sent out in the Icao flight plan format, then you need to make sure that you fill in the Icao equipment information here. So let me do this, stop the ForeFlight stuff here for just a second and share a different screen with you folks. And the Icao equipment, there's lots and lots of different stuff on there. I went to, if you type in a search engine for Icao flight plan, and somewhere in there it'll see the one I picked. You choose, go through there. One of them will end up being the one that comes right from the FAA that has all sorts of information about what to fill into what blank on the Icao flight plan. But basically for ForeFlight, the things that you need, and I came up with the ones that are the ones that are used most often. So the first thing you want to do is in the Icao equipment section, put in the letter S. The S is for a standard comm nav approach aid equipment equipped airplane. This includes the VOR and the ILS, so you don't have to add those in later. The other one is an N for that you don't have a radio. So obviously most of the people that are flying around the Minneapolis area anyway would have to have the letter S, because you got to be able to talk to people to flying around. Then the next one is depending on what kind of system, extra navigation system you have in there. If you put the letter B in there, if you have an LPV, basically a WAS type GPS system. If you have a standard VOR, and with DME aboard, then you have to put in the letter D for DME. And finally, the G for GNSS, which is the Global Navigation Satellite System, which is the generic term for what we call GPS. So in most of the airplanes that we fly, for the instrument airplanes that we fly at Thunderbird, we have S and G because we have a GPS system that does not have LPV. Then the next section in the filling out the aircraft information is called Icao Surveillance. What do you have aboard your airplane that will help the radar, help ATC figure out where you are? If you have a mode A transponder only, then the letter would be the letter A, but most of us fly around in Minneapolis where we need a transponder with mode C. So the letter C gives you the basic transponder information, the mode A side, and the mode C side, which is the altitude encoding side. Now, since we're also flying inside the 30 nautical mile mode C veil or flying anywhere where the transponder with mode C is required, now since January of this year, you're required to have ADS-B out. And so depending on the transmitting frequency of your system, you can either do B1, which is 1090 megahertz ADS-B out only. B2 means that you have out and in capability. All the airplanes that we rent at Thunderbird Aviation are B2s. They have ADS-B out so they can tell what the ATC where they are, and the in capability allows we bought the Stratus ADS-B system, which does the transponder stuff and also the ADS-B out stuff, but the added bonus is the ADS-B in capability from the Stratus transponder ADS-B system sends that information to your ForeFlight. So you can get aviation weather while you're flying. You can get traffic information based on the ADS-B signal coming into the airplane. If you have an ADS-B system that transmits under the UAT system, then it's U1 for out only and U2 for out and in. The next thing is in the ForeFlight is the weight category. If you're at most of all the airplanes that Flying Cloud or that belong to Thunderbird are an L category. And either we weigh less than 7,000 kilograms and our weight category is light. There's an M for medium and an H for heavy. If you happen to be one of those people who fly bigger airplanes, then just go into the Icao system there to figure out which one, where the break off is for the different weights. The system in board and ForeFlight also asks for an Icao PBN number. That is, it just depends on what type of system you may have. It may be if you have the specific type of required navigation precision approach system, may be able to put an S1 in there. If you have an RNAV2 type system for your GPS, that's extra information that you may need to add. Most of the airplanes at Flying Cloud do not have the PBN system, so we just leave that part blank when we get to the system itself. So back to the ForeFlight screen on my iPad. So that was all the stuff we talked about there in the filing section. The other stuff that's required, if you have this stuff available on your airplane, that's now required on Icao flight plans, is what type of life rafts you have. They call them dinghies, or what type of emergency equipment you have available, life jackets, radio, survival type equipment. So if you have that stuff aboard your airplane, go to the Icao, search Icao flight plan to come up with the list that the FAA has. You also go to FAA.gov and type in and search for Icao flight plan. That's where I found all the information here to figure out exactly how to put the information in here if you have dinghies and emergency equipment on board your airplane. So again, if you're brand new to ForeFlight, then you want to spend some time at the very beginning typing in the aircraft information to make sure that you're able to use let ForeFlight help you as much as it can with the flight planning that it can do for you. Custom content is just that, being able to add specific things for your types of airplanes. Track logs are after you've been flying. If you hit you can set it up either well record automatically, or you can have it record only when you choose it, but it actually records the entire flight. The top part there is where you flew. The part on the bottom of the screen there is the speeds and altitudes that you were at. So you can tell when we went down to do turns around the point and S turns across the road, as the altitude, the green line went down way low, and the power setting went back to be able to get us down there. And then you can use this information to transfer it to Google Maps. And if you don't want to spend the $300 version to be able to get the 3D picture that ForeFlight can do for you, you can transfer this to Google Maps and have it give you a look of where you were flying over in Google Maps, and it'll draw the altitude changes that you did along the flight. The devices section here is for the different types of devices that you can do, other than the Stratus information that I talked about that we have in our airplanes. There's various things that you can go on to the ForeFlight page. They have systems that are like the Stratus system, which I've heard maybe being discontinued, but now they have systems like this one where the Sentry, it sends you ADS-B information and also does GPS information, so that I think they're moving more towards this type of setup if you do not have the ADS-B out capabilities like we have in our airplanes. You can, if you have have a Jeppesen account down here in the bottom, be able to set up input your Jeppesen account information. So along with all the FAA charts and stuff, you can use your Jeppesen account to be able to get Jeppesen en route charts, low and high, and Jeppesen approach plates in the ForeFlight itself. And the last thing on the more side here is if you have people on board your airplane that have an iPad with them, you can have them, you can start this thing and they'll be able to pick up the stuff that from your ForeFlight onto their iPad and follow the flight along as you're going along. Most of the people I fly with are already pilots. They already have the ForeFlight all ready to go. So I've never exactly used that in an airplane yet. So again, the more side of things, the most important section in this is to go to the aircraft and be able to set that up. The other thing you can do, if to spend the time to do it, is go in and I'll see if it fixed itself now that I've updated the airplane. It's not in there. So you can go into the wind balance section, and the setup should be, if you put in the tail number of something starting with the letter N again, that is something that is in the FAA database. A lot of this stuff should come up to begin with. If you're flying an airplane that doesn't have it, just go to the FAA, the ForeFlight guide, and they'll talk you through how to put all this information in there. And once you have this information in there, then you can go in and just do the setup section here and put all the stuff in to get it in there in the first place. Then you do the load section and just put in the information about how much baggage you got, how much fuel you're taking, what are the weight of the people in the front and the back seats, and it'll automatically do the weight and balance for you. And because it's connected to ForeFlight, if you do a flight plan, it'll tell you where your center of gravity is going to be when you finish the flight. So now back to the main screen. I just hit maps. So let's start in the upper left-hand corner to talk about all the various things that ForeFlight can show you. Let me tap on the menu section in the upper left-hand corner here are all the different things that you can add to your ForeFlight screen. Right now, stand by. Right now, I have the VFR Sectional up because, you know, again, this is one of the things that is automatic when even at the $100 level. As I squeeze on my screen here, and as you can see, it has all the sectional charts, even for Cuba, because which is very interesting, and all the way out to Puerto Rico. So then obviously Alaska and Hawaii, and all the way over here to Guam. Then if you select the menu again and just select the next thing down, then it gives you all the IFR charts. So this is the Ifr Low Chart for all the same, for I guess everything except Puerto Rico now. And for those of you with the more powerful airplanes, you can even have the high charts, which gives you the routes to fly to Hawaii and then all the way to Guam. So that all those things will be included in any purchase you make with ForeFlight. The other side is this aeronautical thing. When you tap aeronautical, this bar of menu items appears over on the side. It adds information to the map, because like with most things, if you're flying to the south and you got track up, then the whole map's upside down, and sometimes you have a hard time reading exactly what the information is on the chart. So you start tapping these things on the side. The first one gives you all the airports, and if you zoom in, it gives you the 4-letter identifier of the airport. And if you're flying south, then that lettering will be flipped around so that the lettering will always be towards the top of the iPad, so that you'll be able to read that information easier. But all the airports, both public and private, will be listed and displayed on the screen there for you in the aeronautical section. And the next button down, excuse me, is all the airspaces. So all the Class B airspace, including all the altitudes for the airspace itself. But for some reason, the information that tells you the altitudes doesn't get bigger with the screen, so you still have to have your glasses on to make sure that you can read the altitudes. And then, because we've got to go all the way over here, then all the restricted areas and MOAs and all that stuff's on there. Class C airspace, all that information is available to you in the aeronautical section when you tap on the airspace section. Things are going to get a little busy here, so I'm going to take off the airport stuff. As I move down, the next thing is Airwaves for you people who are IFR type people, and you want to have your VFR sectional out, but want to see the airway that you might be flying along. Then the information about the airway, including all the intersections along the airway, will be listed on the screen there for you. So now we get rid of the airspace, we'll leave the airways on. The next thing then is just a nice piece of information. This is the information about which center you're near, which center you're in. And it'll give you the frequency of the information. So it doesn't give you and it then lists all the centers. I can't really tell if the boundary appears on the screen or not, but it does give the information so that you can pick up the frequencies if you're looking for information for the center. The next thing then is this is also on the sectional, so let me shut that off and see if we can do it this way. Nope, that doesn't work. In the air, no, there it is. There are the boundaries. There's nice little white lines. So then The next one down gives you the topographical information on the aeronautical chart. So without that on, the mountains disappeared. You turn on the little mountain symbol, then all the mountains appear on both sides of the United States and the valleys in the central part of the country. The next thing then is, if you're one of those IFR kind of people that where the IFR stands for I follow roads, then you can click on the next thing down there and it gives you the major highways on the map. So all these things have been added by ForeFlight into the aeronautical system because these are things that users have asked for that is extra information. But again, sometimes when you put the sectional chart up, some of that stuff disappears. Like the information about the highways and the mountains, but the information, but all that stuff above that, the center information, the airways, the airspace, and the airports will all appear on this over the top of the sectional chart or the IFR chart, either the low one or the high one. So to get rid of some of this stuff here, I'm going to take off the aeronautical and shut off the VFR sectional, because the next thing down on the right underneath the aeronautical is called the street map. And so then you can use this like almost like, you know, in your car to be able to help you figure out where to navigate if you're driving. Now, it won't give you driving directions like your car might, but it does give you, this is another way of getting where all the roads and highways are, but this one will bring you all the way down to the individual streets. So if you're like some of my flight instructors, they get a scenic flight that they have to fly, and the person says, can we fly over my house? Well, then you end up pulling this map up so you can get down to the street level view to figure out exactly where their house is and put a dot there so you can figure out where to fly. The other cool thing, and some of my student pilots are using this side, is this is almost like Google Maps, but it's just a satellite picture, and it's called the aerial map. Some of my students will use this to help them pick ground checkpoints when they're doing their VFR cross-country flight planning. Sometimes the information on the sectional chart is a little outdated, especially like where the houses are, or maybe a new road has been added. So if you pick a checkpoint on your route, and we'll talk about how to do that in a little bit. If you pick a checkpoint on your route that you think is a perfect thing to see, then you can go to the aerial map section here and be able to get a specific view to see if that's something that you're going to actually be able to see while you're in the airplane. So in the second column then, let's go back to sectional here. In the second column is all the added stuff that can be put on top of the any of the flying maps to help you make decisions both while you're on the ground and getting planning, and even if you got ADS-B in your airplane, like all our airplanes do, then you can use some of this information. So the radar composite is the radar information at all levels of the atmosphere. And it says, does it just like all the weather channels, all the Weather Channel and all the weather folks on the TV do. The green is rain, the pink is a mixture of rain and snow, and the blue is snow. So the pink may also be an icing, you know, so anything that is pink or blue, there's a possibility that it may be an icing situation. You can use this if you have ADS-B in or into the while you're flying, just that the pixels are a lot bigger, so you don't get as quite the definition as you do when you're sitting here with the Wi-Fi going. And obviously you have when you check the radar stuff, there's a little, across the bottom of the screen here, you can actually turn that on and it'll show you how the precipitation has been moving over the last, in this case, 53 minutes. It takes a while before it finally comes in there, but then it starts going through and we'll just run through all those times over and over and over again until you hit pause. If it's already paused, then you can just hit the timestamp the timestamp on the bottom here to move it through the various times to give you an idea how the weather is going. So again, this one won't give you future radar like the Weather Channel one will, but at least gives you an idea which way the weather is moving. So that was the radar composite. The radar lowest tilt is only available when you're on the ground. And for those of us who are low level type people, this is probably the better choice when you're doing flight planning on the ground and you're hooked up to Wi-Fi, because as you can see, a lot of the rain that was on the radar composite disappeared, because this is down where this is the lowest tilt on the radar. This is the stuff that's probably hitting the ground. Some of those other ones may have been rain and snow or icing situations at the higher altitudes. But the radar lowest tilt is not available when you're flying. You can only get the radar composite when you're flying in the airplane. The next one is always never made a whole lot of sense to me, but you can get what the satellites, what the weather satellites are looking at as far as the clouds are concerned. But the only thing you're seeing is the top of the clouds, and so it may be a beautiful, bright, sunny day down where you are. Maybe not sunny, but at least a very, very good VFR day where you are. But it's just the clouds are up at a very high altitude. If you're more of a weather geek, then you can use the color satellite system, because this gives you a better idea of where the level of the clouds are. I think the bluer the color, the higher the clouds. When you start getting into the orange and the reds, though, those tend to be at a little bit lower altitude, because it's basically based on the temperature of the clouds. Let me move the screen out here. Let me turn this on again. So there's the basic sectional map. When you select the icing in the US, then you see the blue stuff start to appear. This shows areas of where the weather is such that if you're in visible moisture, you're probably in an icing situation. The darker the color, the more severe the icing is. Turbulence is the same thing. And for those of you who like lows and highs and frontal information, then you can choose the surface analysis chart, and it puts that information right from the Weather Service right onto the sectional chart, or whatever flight chart you happen to be looking at. The hazard advisor, as you can see down there in the lower right-hand corner, excuse me, you got to be flying for this to be able to appear, because it has to know, where you're going, and sorry, you got to be flying so it knows where you're headed, but also because it'll also be able to tell what altitude you're at and tell you then where you're at, if you're close to any obstacles on the ground. If there's no colors on the screen, then you're above everything. If you start getting within 1,000 feet of some of the obstacles on the ground, then the stuff starts to turn yellow. If you're within 100 feet of it, it turns red. The traffic information when you're on the ground uses the Wi-Fi to go into the systems that track aircraft, and will display them on your screen. The closer you get, the more information you get about the airplane. the call sign and what altitude, and basically, you know, basically looking at the thing where they're headed. This is also if you have ADS-B in your airplane, then you can use this same position, tap this same thing in the air, and you'll use the ADS-B in information and show you all the aircraft that have ADS-B out in their aircraft to give you their position. And if they've decided to put their tail number into the system, you'll be able to tell their tail number, and you can tap on the airplane on the screen. It'll tell you what altitude they're at and what speed they're flying. But it looks like you're both headed to the same airport. You can tap on the other guy and see if they're going to be, if they're faster or slower than you, to see if they're going to get there first, or you're going to both arrive about the same time. The next thing here is the CAP grid. For those of you who are in CAP, you're doing search and rescue type operations, ForeFlight has set up some stuff in there so that you can set up a grid on the chart so that you can fly your airplane along those grids to make sure that you're adjusting for all the winds and stuff. Underneath that is all the airmets and sigmets. Now again, just like the aeronautical information, they give you a selection box, set of boxes on the bottom to be able to choose which ones you're looking for. All the the first one there is icing, and then you just tap on it, and it gives you the information right out of the National Weather Service that comes from the airmets and sigmets to tell you exactly what the information is based on that, based on the reporting, the forecasting that goes into the airmets and sigmets. Turbulence high, if you're going up high. Low turbulence, the severe turbulence gets its own red square there. So there's two little hats on the turbulence symbol there, letting you know that it's severe between 12,000 and 20,000 feet over there. The airmet for IFR, and over in the mountains, the mountain obscuration information. And we might not see any of these right now. Oh, look at that. And thunderstorm airmet, or the convective sigmets then are listed on here, giving you information about the thunderstorm forecasts and where they're probably going to be. The next one is TFRs. It will always put down, if it's red, then that TFR is active. And you can tap on that to be able to get the information, and then if you want to read all the words about what it is, just tap the little arrow and it gives you the whole spiel about exactly what the information for that TFR is. This one that I've zoomed in on here is the one that's outside Grand Forks Air Force Base, where they do all the training for the people who fly drones for the Air Force. If it's yellow, it means that it's a TFR that is not active right at the moment. I just lost it. There it is. Like this one over here near Hibbing. Notice it's right next to the little mine symbol there. This is the TFR that is put into effect periodically when it's time to blow the next wall down on the taconite mine to be able to dig out more taconite from the mines up here in northern Minnesota. So all the permanent ones, even the Romulan neutral zone out here around Washington, D.C., and went down here in Orlando, for Disney World, even though there's nobody there right now, or very, very few people, not as much as there used to be. There's a permanent TFR around Disney World and another one around Disneyland out in California. Now with the sports not going, but the cool thing about TFRs, and I don't see one right here right now, there's probably going to be one for tomorrow. Let's be playing someplace else. Let's go here. There it is. This is the only place you can find this information. The TFR here around Green Bay Stadium. ForeFlight in its, because under the normal FDC NOTAMs that you go to look at to find the TFR information, under the FAA.gov site, if you go in there and search in the TFRs there, you're going to get the permanent ones. You're going to get the ones where the president is. You're going to get all those kind of situations. But but every time there's a stadium that can hold more than 30,000 people, and there's an event going on in that stadium, then a temporary flight restriction is created over that stadium during the time of the game. So they've set the TFR up so that it starts an hour before the game starts and was supposed to go until an hour after the end of the game. But like most things here, they'll put a little caveat down there. The end times are estimated because if they go into overtime or extra innings, if it's a baseball stadium, then it may be extended longer than that. But the only way to find those, those stadiums that are going to have active TFRs in the next day or two is to go to ForeFlight, because ForeFlight has gone into all the sports for college and professional sports, input all the schedules into their database, and sets up the sports TFRs on the screen there for you, so you can actually see these as you're flying. And down here at the bottom is flight category. Let's go over here. Let's go see where it's going to change. So the flight category is based on the old area forecast outlook information, where they used in the area forecast when they were putting those out. At the very end of the forecast, it would just say outlook, and it would say VFR, MVFR, IFR, or LIFR. So ForeFlight took the weather in those four things and turned it into color coding so that at a glance, you can see what's happening at the airport. So VFR in the color coding of green here means that the ceiling is greater than 3,000 feet and the visibility is greater than 5 miles. Marginal VFR is the color blue on the screen, and that means the ceiling is from 1,000 feet to 3,000 feet, and the visibility is from 3 to 5 miles. IFR then is ceilings from 500 feet to 1,000 feet, and visibility from visibilities from a half a mile to a mile. And then the pink color is low IFR, meaning ceilings less than 500 feet, and the visibility is, less than a mile. So you can tell just at a glance here, looking at your chart, if you're a VFR only kind of guy, you're not going to be heading into southeast Minnesota, southwest Wisconsin today, because the weather's bad that direction, and that stuff's probably moving up our direction right now. So that's the flight category. Surface winds are the old barbed system. These are the winds that are reported at the various airports. Again, it doesn't get any bigger when I zoom in. So down here at Wapaka Airport, you see a flag and a flag and a half flag. So that means the winds are at 15 knots. If the wind is, if you see a flag that looks like it's half mast, that means the winds are at 5 knots. Like this one here, Black River Falls. Then winds aloft, over you got a slide bar over here on the side where you can choose the altitude. And as you go up in altitude, the winds get stronger. So obviously when the pennant shows up, that means that it's like Roman numerals. Each individual flag is 10 knots. The pennant is 50 knots. So the higher you go, the stronger the winds become. Or today, the lighter the winds become. The temperature dew point spreads. You can tell where the areas where it's going to be very humid. Back to the temperature, if it's below freezing, it gives you it gives the temperature in a red square to let you know that that number is negative, and it's all in Celsius. Visibilities, ceiling, and sky coverage. Like the old, charts there. So obviously, total coverage, overcast is all filled in. Scattered is, the 1 pie piece. Broken is the 3/4 of the pie filled in. And clear is a circle with nothing in it. Now, for those of you, I just saw a chat thing in there. Somebody was looking for information about the basic weather information. If you have nothing, even with nothing selected over there, you can tap on the airport and it gives you all the information in the nearby area, but all the airports that are nearby. So which one you're looking for, tap more and tap details. And right there in this square, all the information comes up about the airport itself. Then the next tab over is the weather at that airport. They color code the information, the weather report, so that again, if it's marginal VFR, all the coding will be there, and then they decode it for you right underneath that. Plus, give you the weather at airports nearby. So you can get the METAR information. The next tab over is the terminal aerodrome forecast from the nearest place to the terminal aerodrome that has a terminal aerodrome forecast. So since Flying Cloud doesn't have one, they pull up the information from Minneapolis. The MOS, let me make sure I get this right now. Model Output Statistics is what MOS stands for. And reading through it, there's, some of the stuff you read about this, it gets really technical and all that kind of stuff, but bringing it down to a pilot level, basically what it is a grid forecast. Taking the information from the METARs and giving you forecast information for a specific spot. So if you're at an airport that doesn't have a terminal aerodrome forecast nearby, but it does have weather, it does have a system or the weather information is going there, there may be a MOS forecast that you can use for that airport. Now, when you're doing your flight planning, and if you're for your IFR guys determining whether you need a alternate or not, or all those, the IFR rules, you have to use the METARs and the TAF, but it does say in the regulation or any other weather information. So now, if the TAF says the weather's getting better, but the MOS says the weather's getting worse, then I would err towards the weather getting worse side. If the TAF says the weather's getting worse, the MOS says the weather's getting better, same thing. Err towards the part that says that, you know, the worst case scenario. But the MOS basically gives you the color coding again, but the winds and where the clouds are. But the nice thing about the MOS forecast is it does give you the temperature at the various times. The first thing is, you know, for a quick look, you can just spin right through it and figure out when the weather's going to be good and when the weather's going to be bad by just looking at the color coding. Excuse me. Then the other nice thing about the airport information is winds aloft. So if you're so now if you're going to go flying right now, here's the most current winds aloft forecast now. When you look at this one and then go to the AWS site and look at the winds and temperatures aloft forecast on that, the numbers are going to be different. I have not been able to corner anybody from ForeFlight yet. They usually been, since all the, I was going to go to Sun and Fun. I was going to go to AirVenture, but all that stuff got canceled. Because usually I go to the ForeFlight booth and talk to them and listen to them talk for a while to get all the new information about what's going on in ForeFlight. I wanted to ask them, where do they get the information for their winds aloft forecast? My assumption is that they have an algorithm in their computer that takes all the winds and temperatures aloft forecast from all over the country and then will chunk that information and pick those, you know, like, so obviously for this one from Flying Cloud Airport, there's going to be a whole lot of information based on the one that comes out of Minneapolis, or basically Chanhassen, and maybe a little bit out of La Crosse, not so much out of Grand Forks or Duluth, maybe a little bit more out of Alexandria, all those places in the area around us that have an official wind and temperatures aloft forecast. They put all that information into a computer and it says, okay, you're flying cloud. So if the winds are like this at all these other places, let's do some interpolation and saying this is what the winds are going to be like over the top of Flying Cloud Airport. And then just like the winds and temperatures aloft forecast, it goes through the next 24 hours, giving you a new forecast every 3 hours. So if you're planning on flying tomorrow, you can look at this and scroll through it like I'm doing and figure out what the winds are going to be at your altitude when you're going flying. Now, that, you know, so that's one way of, you know, so just like any of these electronic systems, there's a million ways of doing these things. And so the other way to display this information for you is to tap the full screen. Sorry, hang on just a second. On the when you tap full screen, then all this, basically the same information shows up, but instead of having to scroll through a lot of the stuff, a lot of the information appears right at the top there. The latest weather, and if you tap the weather tab, you get the same information that we just talked about: the METAR information, the nearest TAF, the MOS stuff, the winds and temperatures aloft. The info tab gives you the information for the airport, where all the frequencies that you need in order to be able to work that airport. But now the extra stuff here now is information about the runways. It takes the weather information from the METAR and then tells you of all the runways that happen to be at Flying Cloud Airport, which one happens to be the best runway to use based on where the winds are blowing right now. So at runway 10 left and right at Flying Cloud Airport has 8 knots of headwind and 6 knots of crosswind. And so they even label it for best wind. You can land on runway 1836, it'll give you, runway 18, excuse me, gives you 7 knots of headwind and 7 knots of crosswind. So then you don't have to do that graph thing where you're trying to, you know, figure out the difference between the runway and the wind direction and how many degrees off that is, and you know, that whole business there. So it does all that information right there for you. Plus it gives you information about the runways over on the side here, what kind of lighting it has, and what the touchdown elevation is. The procedure page for everybody, it has, this is where the ForeFlight gives you all the stuff that comes in the all the information in the approach plates and SIDS and stars and that type of thing. But the airport information, if you tap airport diagram, it goes to the plate section and shows you the airport diagram right out of the system. And you get when you go to the $200 level, you get the blue edging around the diagram itself, and then it lets you know that if you're anywhere near this airport, the geo-referencing system will put your airplane on this map, and you will follow along. The airplane will move along this chart as you're using it to be able to know where you are on the chart. And the nice thing about it is, like with all the stuff here, they've added the ability to draw on the chart. This works for any of the charts, even the ones that are not geo-referenced. So they tell you that you're going to taxi to runway 10 right via Alpha Foxtrot Bravo Hotel. You can look at the map, put your finger down on it, Alpha Foxtrot Bravo Hotel, and draw the route right on your map. Now, I didn't do a very good job with that one because you can also change the color so that it's a little bit easier to see. Then when you're done with all that stuff, if you just hit the little circle at the top there, next to the word clear, it'll just clear the last line you drew. And if you hit clear and clear annotations, it removes all the stuff off the screen. Then it has departure procedures that you can choose for the IFR guys. It has arrival procedures that you can use and all the instrument approaches into that airport. Now, if you have the $200 version, you can, if you know what approach you're going to do, you can tap the map section and it'll take the sectional, take the approach plate and put it right on the map for you. This is what I use when I'm doing check rides so that I can see if the person's flying the approach correctly and to make sure that I'm not going to fly into any other kinds of airspace. They tap the little settings gear up there on the top. Down at the very, very bottom, you have the another slider that you can use. And basically what this does is change the opacity, how opaque the approach plate is. You bring it all the way over to the right. You can't see anything underneath the approach plate. You touch the dot and move it the other way. It starts making it more and more transparent so you can see more of the stuff underneath it. If you're flying in the dark, you hit the invert colors and it turns all the white stuff black and all the black stuff white. It'll give you all the other approaches in that airport. So if you want to change the one you're looking at, you can do that right from the settings section here. And when you're all done with it, you just tap hide plate and away it goes. Or you tap on full screen and it goes back to the plate section. All the NOTAMs that are at your airport. Just slide through all those, all the obstacle NOTAMs that may be there, and the TFRs that are in the area of your airport. So they pull this information right out the FTC NOTAM. So it includes all the changes in obstacles. So this is more FTC type NOTAMs and the TFRs. So it's all the information that you have available from the FTC NOTAMs right here on the screen. Basic information about the airport up at the top. Again, the taxiway button takes you to the airport diagram. the FBOs, tells you the FBOs that are available, and if the FBO is smart, they'll send you the information to ForeFlight when they change their prices so that you know exactly what the price of gas is at the places, and all the other information about organizations that are at that particular airport. And if you're a ForeFlight member, then you can send information to ForeFlight. They will vet it to make sure that it's okay, and then they will add that information to the comment section here so you can see what other people have found out about your airport if you're going someplace that you've never been to before. So there's remarks, comments, and then if you tap add comment, you can just type it on in there. So you can get to this from the from tapping on the map, or you can go over to the airports tab down here at the bottom, on the bottom left-hand side. And if it's an airport you don't know anything about, but you know that you're going to the town of Raleigh. Oops, keep forgetting. Then if you just type in the name of the town, it gives you all the airports that are connected to anything where the town name is Raleigh. Then you find the one that you want, tap on that, and it automatically changes the information on your screen there. And it gives you all the same information about that you can pull up. If it's someplace that you go to a lot, then you just tap the star in the upper part of the airport information there, and it ends up over on your favorite side. I have quite a few over here on the side of over on this side, that the ones that I use most often during my training. And then also over on the airport side here, you also have the airports that you've searched for recently. So if it's something that you've looked at, but you decided now I need to make that a favorite, you can find this over here on the recent side. And then tap on it, and it gives you the information right there again. The browse side is a little tricky. That's where you're going. You tap on the state, and then you got to go through the whole state to figure out what airport you're looking for. It's a whole lot easier just to use the search engine and type in the name of the town that you know the airport's close to. So before we go into the flight plan portion here, let's just go across the bottom real quick. We'd already looked at the airport stuff. The maps is the choice you make to figure out, and then choosing the menu over here under the menu section, which map you want to specifically look at. The plates are where you go to look at, and if you have, like I do, 2 airports you work out of all the time, you can memorize those and click add plate and put that plate on there. The ability to find instrument approaches just by tapping the airport and going and using that information there, it's a whole lot easier than trying to organize the plates on your own using this stuff. And I know some people who do that, but they end up with there are ways you can go into the pilot guide there and figure out how to organize this stuff so that it makes sense to you, so you know exactly where you need to look to be able to find this, because you can add binders to it and that type of thing, be able to set this thing up exactly the way you want it. To me, it's so much easier to get the approach plates and everything just by tapping on the map, and then so that it's a whole lot easier than to try to download all that stuff onto this section of ForeFlight and search for it in here. So the only thing I have in my plate section then is Crystal Airport and Flying Cloud. The document section is where we already looked at. That's where you can put in all the information that you can download from the FAA, from ForeFlight. If you want to spend the extra money because you're flying to Canada a lot, then you can use there's information that you can download for all the rules and regulations from Nav Canada. Imagery works when you're hooked up to Wi-Fi. It basically gives you all the information that you can get off the AWS site. The surface analysis chart. Excuse me while I move my cat. The surface analysis chart, and then all the charts for the forecast weather. The color coding is just like the radars, and it shows you where the highs and lows are going to move to. It's a fairly large, and after a certain time the colors disappear. It's an overview of the whole country. So if you're traveling from here to St. Cloud, it may or may not be the best place to look. Precipitation information, significant weather outlooks, just like before. Convective outlook information, convective forecasts. Being wintertime, there's not a whole lot of those. Graphical stuff for clouds, and you can break it down into specific sections of the country for various times. The basic winds aloft charts, so you can look at the winds at various altitudes to figure out which way the wind's blowing and whether you're going to have a headwind or not. Looks like going south today is probably not the best choice. The graphical air mats that you can also pull up on your screen. All the SIGMETs for convective and all the for the large airplanes. Icing information, turbulence information, satellite stuff, all the things that you can pull up on the map too. So, skipping flights for just a second. The ForeFlight has set up preset scratch pads for you. The first one is for ATIS information. Once you get it, it's already, when you pull up the scratch pad, the pin system's already set up. You can just start writing with your finger. And just as the information is being given to you, you just write it in there. Gives you if you're one of those if IFR people trying to figure exactly where the clouds are going to be, you can write that information there. Temperature, dew point, what runway you're probably going to be working at. Then if you're an IFR guy, then they even have the one for the instrument clearance that you're going to get. To be able to write in the course, the cleared to, the route, the altitudes you're going to fly, the frequencies, and the transponder information. Then there's just a blank page that you can use to write down anything that you want. The checklist information is the next thing there. And you can, if you download it as a particular airplane, like 508 Quebec, it just goes into the system and says, okay, here's the checklist out of the POH for the Cessna 172S model. And it gives you the information right there. If you have, you can actually have it read it to you, and then you can, and it'll listen for you to say, it'll either read it to you all at once, or it'll stop after a point until you say move on to the next thing, where you say next. Or you can do it by just tapping the stuff at the bottom here. So you either tap on it yourself, or click the check thing at the bottom, or skip that part. It gives it a different color so you know to go back and do that again. And when you're all done and you're going to go out fly the next time, click the reset button and everything gets erased. Then the last thing on here before the more is always the last thing you looked at in the more section before when you were in the more thing. So if you go to aircraft then aircraft becomes the last thing on the line before the more button. If you're looking at devices, then devices becomes the last thing. And it stays there until you go into the more section and change the thing itself. Okay, so we got about 30 minutes left. So I'll give you the basics of how to use ForeFlight to flight plan. For all you VFR people that fly a straight line from one point to the next, the easiest thing to do then is tap the flight plan button at the top there. Make sure that you've got the right airplane selected that matches all the information that you're going to do. And if you wanted to use a different power setting today, then just select the power setting and choose that. If you're flying at a different altitude, then you can look here and just go VFR. So it gives us the correct altitudes. Whoops. Usually, when you get to this part, it gives you what all the, hang on a second. So then the flight plan portion itself is very easy. Type in the 4-letter identifier of the airport you're coming from, hit space. Type in the 4-letter identifier of the airport you're going to, hit space. There. Now it knows where you're flying. Now it knows what to give you as far as winds are concerned. So now you can go, okay, I want to go at 6,000 feet because that's the one I normally chose. But today, now, this takes all the winds along the entire route of flight, averages them out, and says, this is what the wind is going to be on average at that altitude for this flight. You may start with a tailwind and end with a headwind. So the average is a headwind. You may start with a headwind and end with a tailwind, but the average ends up being a tailwind. So the information that you're going to be getting here is going to be based on an average. So if you look at this thing and say, well, I don't want to go at 6,000 feet, then I'm probably going to have to go at 4,000 feet. Then I just choose the different altitude, be able to figure out what that's going to be better. If I said, oh, wait a minute, I'm not flying IFR today, I'm flying VFR, I tap the VFR on the bottom there, and it changes the altitudes over, and it gives you the thousands plus 500, so that you can now choose between all those. And since you've chosen the airplane already, then over in the side here, it gives you how much gas you're going to use and approximately how long it's going to take you to get there. All that information is also shown on the very bottom of the thing there. Your distance, your estimated time en route. The ETA doesn't appear until you start moving. How much fuel you're, based on the fuel flow that you choose, how much gas you're going to use. So if you say, well, maybe I want to go at 55% today, then it'll change the fuel level too. The nice thing about this is if you don't have ADS-B in your airplane, or a system that allows you to be able to send that information to your ForeFlight while you're flying, along the bottom here, we just passed the, there's a little suitcase thing with a exclamation point right next to it. What it does is looks at 50 miles around your route of flight. And then you can choose to download all the weather information inside that spot that gives you all the weather, the airmets and sigmets, and any TFRs that are inside that area. If you want to, you can download the fuel prices. If you're flying along there and you wanted to, you want to figure out who's got the cheapest gas before you get to where you're going, so you want to stop there to buy the cheap gas, then you can do that. You can download all the NOTAMs, and because I spent the extra money, I can download the 3D aerial imagery of the airport, so it'll give me a picture of what it's going to look like when I get to my airport. You can either hit the word pack, and all 96 megabytes of information will be downloaded into your iPad, or you can pick and choose which ones you want. Then that information is in your iPad, and you can use that all along your route of flight. Now, obviously, if the weather changes or the if the weather changes along your route of flight, it's not going to update anything while you're flying unless you have ADS-B in and you're able to pull that stuff out of the off the ADS-B in portion of your system. But at least, you know, but if you don't have ADS-B in, at least it gives you the information. As long as you're not flying for, you know, 6-7 hours, the weather is probably going to be close enough. But the main thing here is it gives you the terminal airdrome forecast in that weather tab, so that you're allowed to be, and you can look and see what the forecast is supposed to be as you're flying along, what the wind and cloud information is going to be along your route of flight. So that's what the little suitcase means. If you're going to use this route a whole lot, you can tap the star, it becomes a favorite, and then that's that 3D thing, so I won't go there. So if you tap it to make it a favorite, then the information is available to you under the route section. Once you've put the information in there, you can edit it however you want. If you're an old school like me, or you're watching somebody do a specific route and they have specific points chosen to fly along, then, okay, coming out of Flying Cloud, they're going to use the road. Coming out of Excelsior as their first checkpoint. If you tap and hold there, a little circle appears on the screen underneath your finger. When you let go, then all sorts of information will appear there, including, did you want to choose these airports? Did you want to choose these nav points? Did you want to choose these waypoints? Or did you want to use that exact point in the world? The latitude and longitude at the top here is that exact point. So if you tap the latitude and longitude, it just draws a little diamond there saying, oh, there's your first checkpoint. And like we talked about before, if you shut off the sectional and go to the aerial map, you can say, so what did I choose? What's it going to look like when I get to that point? Well, really, I'm not anywhere close to that road anymore. I chose my point over this lake, so then you could erase that one and move it over to the road. That's if you're being real picky about this. Let's go back to the sectional. But anywhere along the route, then you find a point that you want to use as a checkpoint, just tap and hold, tap on the latitude and longitude. Now, if it's something that you're going to use forever, then you can tap on that right information right there, and click the More button, and click the Save button, and actually name it something other than the latitude and longitude, and then it saves it as a user waypoint in your ForeFlight system. So then when you start doing that stuff and adding points to your flight plan, when you go back to the flight plan, all those points appear on the flight plan, and you go to Nav Log, it'll tell you since I got the weather information coming in through the Wi-Fi, it'll tell me what my magnetic heading should be along each of those sections of the route based on the winds that are blowing, based on the forecast that it has. What the distance is between each of the points, how much gas I'm going to use between each of those points. The first one is the total, so it adds them up as you go along. Over here, the leg is just the individual leg distance for each of the legs. And then when you start flying, if you keep the flight plan down here in the nav log position, then all these numbers will change as you fly along, including giving you the time remaining and your estimated time of arrival at that point. And whether you're doing IFR or VFR, if you choose the profile section, then it'll give you the information along your route of flight for what the altitude that you've chosen. The airspaces will be drawn in profile. The different weather information that you can see there for turbulence and icing will be there. Again, you may have to be the $300 version for you to get the icing stuff to show up. But if you chose an altitude that was, you can change your altitude by tapping on the altitude itself. They need to work on this. I have a heck of a time working on this. But if you tap on the altitude itself and move it down, now you're too close to stuff. You're going to run into all these obstacles, including the ground at all these places, and the stuff that's yellow is the stuff that you're within 1,000 feet of. So you, just by choosing the altitude, even if it's the altitude you chose here in the edit, the profile is going to let you know where those places where you're too close to stuff, both obstacles on the ground and the earth itself. For you IFR guys, when you're done with that, just hit clear and the whole thing disappears, or you can, once the oval is there, just tap until it goes underneath your finger like that, and then just slide it off the flight plan. You can do that with any of the points on there. But for you IFR guys, you can draw the straight line, then go to the Ifr Low Chart and do like old-fashioned and go in here and try to figure out which VORs you want to go to, which routes you want to fly, and then just start adding that stuff information in there. For example, you want to fly from KFCM to the Jonah intersection. Oops, in the wrong spot. Then insert, whoops, cancel. Insert after Jonah intersection, Victor 171. And then it just draws Victor 171 all the way out until it disappears. In this case, it says, okay, roll log's the closest point, then you're going to fly direct to there. But if you decide, no, wait a minute, I'm going to go to Alexandria and pick up Victor 2. So I'm Victor 171, insert after 171, type in Victor 2. Oh, this is interesting. Airway USA. There we go. Again, takes you to weird intersection, but now you want to go all the way to the VOR. So then you type in FAR. So that takes time to get all that stuff in there. The other cool thing about the ForeFlight system is this routes button. All the routes here that are listed have been, like the ones that are listed under ATC cleared, have been routes that have gone from Flying Cloud to Fargo and have actually been given to aircraft. And so then you can, if you select the route, it shows you where the thing flies. Now the Kilbrew 1 takes you all the way up to Gopher and then out Victor 2, so it just depends on whether you want to do that or not. All the other routes then, as you tap each one, gives you exactly where you would be flying on the map up above. And then if that's the one you want to fly, that's the one we already got. So let's do this one. So the other thing to remember is take a look at the very last line on each of one of these things and make sure that what you're choosing is something that you can do. Obviously, this first one, ATC clear, was a turboprop or a jet or a piston. It was obviously, since they're going up to flight level 340, this was, somebody that was going up fairly high. So keep an eye on the stuff at the bottom there to make sure you choose something that is close to where you're actually going to be flying. If that's what you choose, select the route. It changes the thing up there. Then all the information on your map changes also. but you don't have to have the IFR information down there. You can use the aeronautical stuff and just pick the Airwaves and have it being shown that way. So that's the route section. Then for the VFR or the IFR guys, there's procedures. If you're a VFR guy and you're going into Fargo, it looks like the best wind today is going to be landing on runway 18. So you choose runway 18, and now you have your choice of whether you want to do a 45-degree entry or a midfield teardrop or a midfield direct. From where you're coming from, it looks like the best thing to do is, best side is midfield teardrop, and then it draws that route right on your map. So if you could fly your little airplane right along that line and do a teardrop entry to runway 18. Since the advisory circular for uncontrolled airports now says that you can do a midfield direct entry, and obviously you're not going to do it at Fargo, but you could do a midfield direct entry. This shows you how to be able to fly that too. And that's if you're going left traffic, it'll give you the stuff for right traffic too. So then you can add this to your route for the VFR guys. The other thing that procedures do is gives you the approaches into the airport. Best wind today is runway 18. And from where we're coming from, it looks like I'll just pick one. So runway 18 to Fargo, out to Zumpy, over to Mooley, and then down. This looks like a GPS approach. If you don't like that, just push it off, go to procedures again, and select any of the approaches that you want to do. It always will help you up. If you're hooked up to Wi-Fi or have weather information available, it'll tell you what the best wind is. If you're coming out of Flying Cloud, it'll give you all the departure procedures that are available if you want to choose one of those and add that to your flight plan. If you're going into Fargo and you want to use and Fargo doesn't have any arrival route, so there's nothing there. We reverse the, so if we go into this thing and stop this, we want to go home now. These two little arrows in the bottom of the edit section there are the reverse buttons. You tap that, and now the thing's going backwards. So now when you hit the procedures, now we got 4 arrivals into Flying Cloud. It may or may not work from where we're coming from. Looks like the best one may be the NC. Oops, I lied. The Gopher 1 from Fargo. So then it eliminates all that other stuff because we can fly the arrival all the way from Fargo right into here and then add it to the route if we want. So IFR stuff, there's all sorts of things in here that you can use to add into the system, or you can do it old school just by looking at the chart and selecting the areas that you want to go to. But the cool thing about it is, for the IFR guys, it allows you to put in the Vfr Airways without having to put in, so that all the individual intersections along the Vfr Airway are automatically added to your nav log. So you can tell exactly how long it's going to be before, if the ATC says, how long is it going to take you to get to SOTI? Then you got to just go to this section here and figure out how long it's going to take to go from, in this case, coming backwards, tailbat to SOTI. And then you can tell them, looking at your ETA section here, what time you're going to arrive there. So, a lot of information here in a very, very fast system. So like I said, the best thing to do here is in the document section. If you download nothing else, download the pilot's guide to ForeFlight so that you can take a look at the information. It's user friendly. You can look at the table of contents and go, oh yeah, I'm looking for planning a flight. You tap on planning a flight, it automatically brings you right to that page. And so that you can start doing the VFR and IFR stuff there. Then the little thing in the bottom corner here, page 2, you can go back to the table of contents, or you can grab the page at the bottom here with your finger and go all the way through the whole thing. And this is the change information here, but in the back is, oops, disregarded. I thought it had an index, so never mind. Back to the beginning, find the information you're looking for in the table of contents, tap on that and it'll give you all the information you need to know about the individual sections in ForeFlight itself. So I'll be hanging on here for just a few minutes if anybody has any questions, but just right now, the information that you put on it, when you clicked on the website there, the information went to my IT guru guy, who is also our marketing guy. If you don't want to be, if you don't want to be added, you need to send an email back to the same place that you got the information about this in the first place. And I'm sorry. And I think it's at fly@thunderbirdaviation.com, and just let the guy know that you don't want your information added to our database. If you do end up getting stuff from Thunderbird, just there's always a place to unsubscribe, so you can do that. Like I said earlier, we'll be doing a seminar every second Saturday. I will be doing a seminar every second Saturday for the foreseeable future, since and doing them on Zoom, since that seems to be the way of the future here, or the way the current time here. So the next one will be on aviation acronyms, Aero and Aviate and any other ones that I can think of. But it's specifically talking about those that are there because of a specific regulation or a series of regulations has made it necessary for us to use that acronym to be able to remember all that stuff. So that's all I have for today. If you want to have any specific questions, you can hang on afterwards. If not, you can just log off here. I will unmute everybody here in the participant section so they can thought I could unmute, hang on. So, and now I'm allowing the participants to unmute themselves. So if you have any specific questions you want to ask me right now, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. If not, if you have no questions or anything else, thank you for coming today. Appreciate it. Appreciate you coming. I'll let your friends know. We will be adding this information to the FAAsafety.gov site every month also, so you'll be able to learn about what our systems are going to be as the months go by here. Thank you all very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
You're welcome.
I have one quick question, and that comes back to the weather information that you were providing. Isn't there a way of being able to get on the screen legends with respect to what the colors mean?
Ooh, good question. I'm not sure, but the cool thing about it is that AWS and ForeFlight have both worked almost like they were working in conjunction with each other. The color coding for the green, blue, red, and pink dots are universal between the AWS site and ForeFlight. I think Garmin, the Garmin one is has a little bit different colors, but they basically are set up the same way. Their colors are just different. So,
Okay.
yeah, so basically, if you're looking at the screen, if it's green, there's no problem. It's Weatherman VFR. The ceiling's above 3,000 feet. The visibility is greater than 5 miles. You'll be able to see forever. And if it's blue, then you got to start looking at it a little bit closer if you're a VFR only guy to figure out, is this within my personal weather minimums? If you're not VFR, anything that's red or pink, just stay away from, because you're never going to be able to get there. But if you're an IFR guy, then you got to, how good do I feel? How, what's my experience level? When was the last time I flew an approach? Can I really go down to 200.5 at this airport if they have an ILS, or just if the place I'm going to is a pink airport, but it doesn't have an ILS approach to it, I'm probably not going to be able to get in there. So I will dig around in my email address is fnauer@thunderbirdaviation.com. If you can send me that question, I will dig around in the ForeFlight book and see if there's any specific information about where to find that on the screen itself. But I know the information about the color coding is in the user guide, in the pilot guide itself.
It is in the pilot guide. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Very interesting. Lots of good information to play around with. Can we get Wings credit for this? And if so, how do we do that?
By signing in through the URL that you did to get the meeting ID. My guy will take all the names of everybody who did it that way and send it to our safety representative, and she will make sure that all the names get put in for FAA safety credit.
Okay.
Laura here. I'm the one who will be entering the credits for Fred. So within the first part of the week, I should be able to get those entered as soon as Fred's IT guy is able to send them to me. I'll get that all in for you guys. And you will get 2 credits because this was a 2-hour seminar.
These ForeFlight ones usually are. So, any other questions, comments, concerns? If you have any ideas for any future seminars, again, fnauer@thunderbirdaviation.com. Just send me the ideas, and I will do my best to try to incorporate them in future ones. Any other questions?